So now we will go ahead and enter our Q&A session. I was informed that Amy Whittington,
Sure,
one of our,
no, I did not. I was, no.
oh, Amy Whittington, another part-time fellow, has joined us. She is in Iowa, so I will take down our PowerPoint and then we will begin a Q&A session. But Cynthia, if we can start with the questions in the chat and we'll go through some of those questions. And then we can allow people to come off mute to ask some additional questions.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you folks in the chat who have been so patient. I have been typing my heart out trying to keep up, but I feel like a lot of these questions are questions that folks will have in general. So hopefully this will answer them. So I'm going to scroll up as high as I can and we'll start from there. The first question said, will we provide a few examples of action research projects that align with the department initiatives? Gabriel, that's a great question. In a few moments, I'm going to go ahead and let our fellows who are in the current cohort, they can talk to you a little bit about what their project is about, and that may give you some ideas on what we're looking for in a capstone project. So if you can just hold tight, and please, Melissa, Joe, and Amy, kind of stick a pin in that because we'll make sure we come back to this one. Caitlin asked the question, how many applicants will be selected for the full-time fellowship? So Caitlin, that really depends, right? We generally like to have about 2 full-time fellows on board. So that's normally the number that we try to shoot for. As far as, I know there's another question further down that asks how many fellows would we have in total. We'll generally keep about 10, between 7 and 10 fellows in the fellowship at one time. And then there's a question from Kelly that says, on the application, it says you can choose part-time or full-time. Is it possible that if you choose full-time but aren't chosen, a person can be considered part-time? That is a consideration, but generally speaking, Kelly, we do like to keep those opportunities separate because we don't want folks to default to full-time with the idea that they can only maybe do part-time. So we do like to keep people separate in that space. And then there's one question that says, is the verification form a part of the application portal? Sophia, yes, it is. This webinar is actually posted on our School Ambassador Fellowship website, and you can go through there and find how to get to that form. Kate asks, what type of fellowship is most often applied for? The part-time fellowship is the one that's applied for the most often. Okay. Is there a way in the portal to see that recommender submitted the letter of recommendation, Jim? Yes. You can go back through and there's a part that says, once you get back in that section, it'll let you know if your folks have been notified and if they have responded. And if they haven't responded, you can either replace them or send them a little reminder for them to submit that form in for you. Okay, one second. For recognition from an ed organization, is that the only awards or can it be fellowships? It can also be fellowships. Any acceptance letter to say you're welcome into a fellowship works as well. I'm a licensed general Paige, your question sounds like a yes, but let's talk off, like maybe offline, so I can get a few more details. Yes, Kate Ralston, policy briefs and articles submitted for doctoral work, as long as they're published, they count as publications. Fran, here's a question for you if you'd like to answer. Will part-time fellows have an opportunity to work at the state ed department? Do you mean, I'm sorry, Leona, do you mean at like if you were in Illinois, you'd work at the Chicago Department of Education, or do you mean would you have a chance to work at the Department of Education in Washington, D.C.? I'm not quite sure about that.
Sorry, I'm not being specific. Good evening. I'm in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So there are opportunities for fellows to come and do work on site. Of course, as you can imagine, given the current situation right now with travel restrictions, that that opportunity is not yet available. But in years past, it has been so. Okay. All right. I am ready to turn it over to, let's see, some live Q&A questions to give other folks a chance to jump in. Before we transition though, would it be okay if Megan, Joe, and or Amy, would you guys like to share a little bit about your capstone project to help give folks an idea of what type of what type of abstract we're looking for your year-long work, please?
Sure, this is Melissa, and I'm currently the superintendent of Stanfield Elementary in Arizona. And because I'm a rural educator, that's where my area of focus and interest is for this capstone. And so I'm looking at recruitment and retention efforts for rural educators. How do you attract teachers to your rural school systems?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening with us. I'm Joe Mascai. I am a resident school ambassador fellow this year. We're obviously dealing with COVID, so I refer to myself as the remote resident this year. I'm going to answer this question twofold. One, I just want to give some advice to applicants who are in the audience who are going to begin to think about what you would like your capstone to be about. Adjectives that I would use to describe, please be specific. Please make your capstone focus pragmatic and applicable, and also make sure that it's manageable. You're going to be a one-man or one-woman research team over the course of the year. When you're looking for ideas, I would suggest that you really look at your immediate work. What's important to you? Where is your passion? Where do you see your focus and your energy going in your specific role within the school district? So I am an elementary principal from Yardley, Bucks County. I'm the proud principal of Afton Elementary, which is a 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. And we were very humbled and very honored as a school community that we were given the National Blue Ribbon for closing the achievement gap. So my capstone focus is basically on principals, specifically principal professional development, and how as principals we use supervision, professional development, and data-based culture in order to close the achievement gap.
Thanks, Joe. This is Amy Whittington. I'm the elementary principal at Central Decatur School in Iowa. And I would echo what Joe and Melissa have shared about it. Absolutely needs to fit a focus or an interest in your district or in your area. My focus is on remote learning in the primary grades, so reducing barriers to families, for families, and the family engagement piece, as well as looking at quantity versus quality at the elementary primary level and how remote learning can be most effective. So it's great to see so many of you on the call and asking such great questions. So.
All right, thank you, Melissa, Joe, and Amy. What we'll do, and I know tons of questions are in the chat, and Cynthia's trying to respond to them. What I will allow people to do is come off mute, and of course, we have to try to do this in an orderly fashion, but to ask some questions of our current fellows. We'll continue to respond to questions in the chat. So if someone would like to ask a question of the fellows that we have on, one thing I will respond to, because I know a number of people asked, because we have a superintendent and two building principals who are online. We do have teachers who are in the cohort as well. So there are teachers and building leaders and district leaders in this actual cohort. So it is a diverse cohort. We've had psychologists, we've had counselors in the past. So all of the cohorts, we try to make them as diverse as possible with experience and experiences across the country.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Sapp from California. My question is about the letters of recommendation. Is there any way that we could know if they have actually submitted them, and maybe should we get a third one as a backup? What is your recommendation on that?
Sure. Within the application system, and that recommender portal, you can go back there and check after you have asked someone to submit that recommendation form for you, and you will actually be able to see the status of that form. So it won't just be floating out there. You'll be able to see if they have responded to that or not.
That's
And
perfect.
and if you would like to have a third person maybe as a backup, like I always keep a backup of backups. I would set an internal deadline for yourself to say, hey, if this person hasn't responded by, 2 weeks out or a week out, I'm going to make sure I ping someone else, and then I can go ahead and send that form over to them, and then I'll get it back on time. So yeah, please, I can just say historically in the past, a lot of folks have not had their application scored because they didn't get those recommendation forms in. So you want to really make sure you stay on top of folks for that, so that your application will get scored.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I have people who have hands up, so I'm going to go down the list of those who have your hand up. So if you have a question and you know how to raise your hand, I'll go down the list. We have Doreen. This is the first name.
Yes. Hello. My name is Doreen Green, and I'm calling from New York. I have a question about getting the form signed from my principal. I've been having some trouble getting that signed, so I don't know if someone from HR is able to sign that form for me, or does it necessarily have to come from the principal? Because I'm getting a little bit of pushback on that, so I wanted to know what you recommend.
So are you referring to the participation verification form?
Yes.
Okay, that actually, we are seeking it to come from an actual school official, and that would be someone in the HR office.
Okay.
So it would be in everyone's best interest to go that route. Remember, school officials, they include people who can make a deal with the federal government through an IPA process, right? Your principal may not be able to do that. So you want to make sure you get folks in the superintendent's office involved, or in the HR department, or in the business office, because at the end of the day, if you are selected, you're going to be working out a contract with them that are going to include things, that go beyond the scope of just, can you participate, right? We're talking about benefits, salary, things like that. So
Okay.
School official, yeah, there's a definition on the website, but again, you want to look for folks who can actually sign off on that level of detail when it comes to your contract.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, Melissa Melkonian.
Hi. So thank you. This is very informative. I loved hearing the capstone projects that were shared. And I'm curious about, from the time that you applied, is it the same capstone, or did you have opportunity to change it along the way? Was your proposal what you are currently doing?
You want to take that one, Joe?
Anyone?
I just unmuted. I'll be happy to tackle that one. So the best way to answer that question is, if you have gone through or are going through the dissertation process, it is similar to that, in that the initial topic is going to morph. And the reason why it is going to morph for you, and the reason why it morphed for me, was when I initially wrote it, I had the perspective of a building principal. And as it continued to evolve and as it continued to morph, I was provided the national landscape at the United States Department of Education. So it broadened, it expanded, especially the access to networks, in order for my capstone to unfold, and in order for me to find resources to support the research behind my capstone. So it's organic is the best way to describe it. You're going to give it life, but it's going to grow on its own. And in growing in its own, that enriches your experience as a fellow, whether you are resident or whether you are campus. So my network has certainly grown outside of my fishbowl of my district, even at my state level. And as I said, now it's a national landscape at this point of view.
And I'll go ahead and add to that. So of course, because of our current situation just with the country and with education, all of the fellows have had to tweak their projects because they applied pre-pandemic. So they've had to make several pivots and adjustments during their fellowship year. So there's definitely an opportunity, kind of once you get into the work that you're doing, really see that hey, I need to make a shift here, I need to pivot here. So that's definitely the flexibility for you to do that. All right, next question, Meg Torelli.
Hello. My question is, I, as well as one of the last respondents, work in New York City schools. So when you're asking me for a recommendation, the verification form to the superintendent, that I understand. The recommendation form from the superintendent, they have probably very little known about me. It would probably be via my principal or my assistant principal. How do I deal with that?
So I'm sorry, are you believing that you have to have both from your superintendent?
No, just even getting one from the superintendent, because they don't really, I honestly, the superintendent has not been to my school. Well, now we have the COVID, but before that has not been to my school. I don't think I've ever seen her. So they're very disconnected. Unfortunately, my school is not one of the worst in the district, so we don't get that much attention. So my question is, does it have to be a recommendation from the superintendent who doesn't know you, or can you have an administrator from your own school?
No, so no, your recommendation does not have to be from the superintendent. No, you can get it from your principal or some other district level administrator who may know your work. Yes.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Kelly Ishmael.
Hi, good evening. My original question has actually already been answered, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my original question has already been answered, but I pivoted, and I just wanted to know, what is a typical day of the resident fellows? What is your day like, or a typical week if a day is too myopic?
Joe, you need to take that one too.
All right, I'm unmuted. And the only thing that I can give as an immediate response is there is no typical day in the life of a fellow. And I think I can say that as resident, and I can probably speak on behalf of my campus fellows as well. The job is eclectic, and that's what I love about it. If you're looking to be re-energized and you want to be engaged in big issues in education, you've landed in the right place. We've done work with our alumni. There are approximately 130 ambassadors out there from across the nation since its inception in 2007 and 2008. Participated in leadership symposiums, communication projects, whether it's the website or newsletters. We're planning right now a virtual Teach to Learn Summit. Hopefully that will be taking place in the spring. Lots of PLCs that you participate in and that you lead, and the same with PDs as well. So very eclectic and nothing typical whatsoever. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe. Janet Waldick.
Hi, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. I also have a question for a fellow Pennsylvanian, the principal. What tangible product do you anticipate resulting from your work?
Good. Where are you from in Pennsylvania?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. All right. I'm about 30 miles outside of Philadelphia, so yeah, East versus West. We won't talk about Eagles or Steelers at this time. End product, it's evolving and it's changing as we're speaking. Initially, when I was thinking about my capstone project, I was thinking of a publication, something entitled an Elementary Principals Primer. how the convergence of professional development, supervision, and database decision-making can close the achievement gap. I was thinking about contacting the Department of Ed in Harrisburg and creating modulars. I was considering reaching out to universities with principal preparation programs and sharing with them the 3 components and not teaching them.
That is at the door.
I'm sorry. Oh, I think we had interruption. I was thinking about going, as I said, to university preparation programs and speaking to them about curriculum renewal so that they would not teach those 3 very essential principal tasks in isolation, but teach them more holistically to aspiring principals. They were just a few of the ideas. Does that help?
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, fellow Pennsylvanian.
I'm going to quickly go back to Kelly's question because Joe responded from a virtual fellowship experience. Cynthia was actually one of our former fellows as well. So I want her to kind of give some feedback of what it's actually like being at the department working as a fellow, full-time fellow. So Cynthia.
Oh, sure. Okay. So as Joe said, no 2 days are alike. Pre-COVID, a lot of the work that I did centered around national engagement and outreach. So as a full-time fellow, it was one of my major duties was to help bring educators into the department and kind of demystify what happens here and make it feel like it's home to all educators, right? This is like the district office of all district offices, and get folks who are actually in the field, boots on the ground, in front of policymakers and folks who are leading different departmental changes and programs, along with actually being able to go out and just leverage the DC experience. I've got to sit in different Brookings Institutes, hearing different types of, going to different national summits that were in DC, participating in some ASCD events. So there's a lot of learning that can happen. And it really is like on a whim, on a Wednesday, someone from the secretary's office will say, hey, I want you to come with me to this meeting here. I want you to share your experience with working with students in this, with this group of superintendents there, or, hey, there's going to be a meeting in Congress, the secretary wants you to do. So it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's definitely no 2 days are the same. And it's a lot of great experiences, a lot of great learning experiences.
Thanks, Cynthia. And what I'll say, because I know a lot of people have will the next cohort be in person or virtual? Of course, our plan and hope is that the next cohort is in person, to the dismay of Melissa, Joe, and Amy, and the other current fellows. But yes, or with the hopes that the country's in a place that we can have an in-person fellowship, but of course it's all depending upon where we are in the situation at that time. So we're kind of dual planning right now for a virtual fellowship, but then also an in-person fellowship as well. All right, next question, Kathleen Reed.
Hi there. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I have a question about the part-time fellowship. So my question is, in order to get the participation verification, I feel I need to know a little bit more about the commitment and specifically the hours and if it will interfere with my work hours. Can you answer to that, please?
Yes. So the work for part-timers are roughly 40 hours a month. So we're looking about 10 hours per week. So nothing interferes with your current work because once again, we do understand that you are still working at your buildings. So you don't have to worry about anything interfering. If we have any activities that may go on during the day, we give you notice in advance. So that you are aware of possibly PLCs that may go on, PDs that may go on, or some activities. So we do our best to kind of work around your actual work day. But I think I should have let Amy respond to that as or Melissa to respond to that as our part-timer. So go ahead and answer. My apologies.
Sure, I can jump in. I think That's the big question. What is the kind of the part-time commitment for many of you? And I think it just depends. Much like Joe said, it varies from week to week. So some weeks are busier than others. There are some things that go on during the school day, and I think that's where having a good relationship with your building administrator or supervisor, or just the flexibility to be able to potentially attend things in short segments during the day. But then there's also the commitment of evening or weekends occasionally needing to do work there. So it is flexible, and some weeks are busier or less busy than others.
I don't think I need to follow up on that. She nailed it. She's right. It depends.
Thank you. Melissa Vargas.
Good evening. Thank you so much for this. First of all, I'm so happy to see so many Melissas on the call. This is really nice, and to hear from the current and past fellows. So I think this was touched upon a little bit earlier, but my particular situation is I have the blessing of my principal, who's actually already submitted his recommendation. There's been a transfer of power in our superintendent's office. I think the original SI may be going through some kind of a medical leave. And so I have not been able to reach anyone at the superintendent's office. I'm assuming they're inundated with everything going on. Not a secretary. Our principal secretary hasn't been able to reach anyone. So if I have the principal's approval and he submitted his documentation, in terms of the attestation of support document, is there someone else that I could look to have that signed off on?
Yes, Melissa, hi. So if the superintendent's not available, I would look to someone in your business office, perhaps, or someone in HR. Would that work? Because you want to make sure that, again, the person who's saying that you can actually participate has to be able to agree to this contract that happens between the federal government and your local school district. So it doesn't have to be the superintendent, but you want it to be someone who can make that call. And a lot of times it's not the principal who can do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. I hope I'm pronouncing properly. Rashon.
Good evening. Sorry, I couldn't get off the mute. My question was actually responded to, so thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I'm calling in. Sorry, I know that my hand probably wouldn't be raised on Zoom, so I wanted to also see if I can ask a question. Can I ask the question at this time, or should I wait until you call a few more names?
If you can wait for a moment, I'd appreciate that. What's your name?
It's Alex.
Alex? Okay, we'll get back to you, Alex. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You are welcome. Glenn Robinson.
Hello, I'm Glenn. I'm from Clinton, Mississippi. I had a question about for part-time fellows. So do the part-time fellows also have a capstone that we're working on, that we'll work on throughout the year?
This is Melissa, and I can take that. The answer is yes. We all have a capstone that we're operating off of during the time of our fellowship. So yes, we do as well.
All righty, thank you. Valerie Page.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So my question is more with eligibility. I actually work for the Committee on Special Education, so it's a little difficult. My application is one of those that are still in draft. I don't have a principal, but I have a chairperson. And she gives her blessings. You know, she already submitted her recommendation. I'm wondering, can she also complete the verification for me, the verification form? And then in terms of the application process, as I'm going through it, a lot of the questions are based on being in a school building. So, for example, an artifact from, I use my prior school's report card because I don't have an artifact from the CSC. So that's been kind of, you know, that's really, my question is really, you know, can I apply and how do I kind of maneuver that?
Can you tell me a little bit more about your school setting? I just want to make sure I'm capturing it correctly. So this is for
Sure.
your experiences, right?
So yeah, so I was I'm a New York City school teacher, special education teacher. However, I work for the Committee on Special Education, and I'm a district representative for the committee. And I work with charter schools, so I have 8 charter school networks that I conduct IEP meetings for.
Okay. So I'm looking over for the experiences, that piece. There's nothing really that limits you from applying in your position, especially since you are having meaningful and sounds like regular contact with educators and students. So can you guide me to, I guess, the place where you're asking about where it seems like it could be exclusive, because I'm not quite sure where.
So when I'm going through the application process, it asks you whether you're a teacher in a school building, or whether you're in a charter school. So I'm not in a school building, or I'm not in a charter school. So I have to put teacher, or if you're an administrator. So it's kind of like none of my situation doesn't apply to any of those. So in the application, I just put teacher and I selected public school because of the. So those are some of the areas. And then when it asks for, you have to put in a special code. I don't have that code for the charter schools because there's several charter schools that I work for.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can do me a favor and send an email to, I'll drop it back in the chat. It's saf@ed.gov. And we can have someone contact you directly and kind of help talk you through and walk you through that process. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
All right. Jacqueline Sapp.
Hi, good evening. Let's see, 2 questions regarding the personal statement. I know it has 4 components to it. Should we actually delineate those 4 components or write it as a fluid narrative? Just semantics there. I just want to know what you thought.
I can say fluid, make it a fluid narrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, Dr. Harrell. Thank you. Also, one last question. I work in a K-8 school, an administrator there, and the choices were, I believe on the application, are you elementary or secondary? So mine's kind of a combo. Is there any place possibly else in the application I could bring that to light? Because it's a very unique situation.
And you say you were in the what grade levels?
It's actually TK through 8th grade. And so it's a combination elementary, secondary school.
So in this space, secondary, we're really looking for high school, so you can fit into the elementary space.
Yeah.
Sounds good. That's what I checked. That sounds right to me too. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, I hate to jump in. We are at 6 o'clock, so if you would like to jump off, you can. However, we're going to stick around a little longer to answer questions, but if you do have to jump off, we totally understand that.
Yes. Alex, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I had some trouble initially logging on through Microsoft Teams. So in terms of my question, I work at a charter school. And so a lot of like the district representation, we don't really have that communication. So I've been hearing the trend of like, then at least contact someone from HR. As being someone who works in a charter school, would our HR department also qualify in that regard?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's okay. So yes, someone in your HR department will qualify. Yes.
Okay. And then now my second question, just to follow up about that, throughout the call, you mentioned a lot around when writing the proposal, the project proposal, it's supposed to benefit like the school community or the district. What if I angled the capstone project as something that impacts like the charter organization? Since sometimes they act like, their own kind of, not district, but like their own entity sometimes.
So I will say that's another layer that you can include in that. So all of the fellows capstone projects have gone beyond their actual school or their districts. So that's something that you can definitely include in your capstone approach. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Deborah Umansky.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
we
me?
hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for having this. Helps to clarify, and good timing because I'm off for 2 weeks, as I guess most of us are. Deborah Umansky, I'm a school psychologist from Santa Barbara, California. And my question is, really any of you can respond, but given that we will have a new administration and new Secretary of Education, and I know you're halfway through your year, but is there something that really appeals to you as, boy, with another year and a different administration, I'd like to spend more time doing and fill that in?
I believe that was one for one of the fellows.
This is Melissa, and Deborah, let me just make sure that I understand what you're asking. You're asking if no matter who the secretary is, if our capstone is what we would have moved forward with. Is that, have I encapsulated that correctly?
I more like, given another year, let's say you were going to be a fellow next year. Is there something that you would like to do more of? Is there some priority that's become clearer to you that you would like to spend more time on if you had another year?
Well, I can answer that as in depth as my capstone project is around teacher recruitment and retention. It's not just a rural issue, it's an everywhere you go issue.
Yes, it is.
And so I would say that another year would probably still not be enough time to really get and dig into that kind of topic. So for me, the answer is I would love to be able to have another year. That's not how this is set up, but you know, in my own space as an educator, a superintendent, that's something that I'm dealing with on a regular basis anyway. And this is a way to move some of that work into the national space.
Thank you.
Yep. And Deborah, I could chime in as well. I think you and I spoke on the telephone.
We did, yes.
It's nice to see you as well. For me, as a building principal, my overarching emphasis is always on the role of the principal as the instructional leader. COVID has had no impact on that whatsoever. We all pivoted, we all went remote, but the bottom line is we did not lose sight of what our responsibility is as principal, and again, instructional leadership. If I had the extra year, and I'm answering this question so that Brian hears me and Cynthia hears me as well, and I can see Melissa laughing because she knows where I'm going. I'm a hands-on person, so like many of you out there in education, although we were able to morph into a remote setting, we missed the personal touch. So one thing that I would love to be able to stay on for an additional year would be to do in-person summits, to go out into the field, to be with my colleagues in education, and certainly school visits as well. But obviously the times in which we are in are preventing us from doing it, but they are two things that I am desperately missing, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Hale, can I
Yes.
answer a question out loud? Because I do know we've seen it a lot in the chat, and I just want to make sure that the folks on the phone here as well.
Yes.
A lot of questions have been floating around dealing with stipend and payment and how that works. So the School Ambassador Fellowship works in collaboration with your school district and the Department of Education. So it is worked out through what's called an IPA. That's an Intergovernmental Personnel Act agreement. And I did drop something in the chat to give you a little more information on it from our opm.gov website. And really, when it comes to your stipend and your pay and your benefits and your salary and your time off and all those things, those have to be bargained between you as the fellow and your school district. And then you take that agreement and then you bring it to the HR department at the Department of Ed, and then the bargain is made that way. So there is no flat fee. Everyone doesn't get a certain amount of money, or everyone doesn't get a certain amount of thing, because we are essentially bringing together educators from across the country, right? So what may be a standard salary in New York City may be far below what someone's making in Texas, or vice versa, or so these are really locally managed contracts. So that's the important piece. And that's why it's really, really important that you get someone from your human resources or your superintendent office or business office to agree to enter into this contract with the department, because what happens is what you agree upon is contingent upon the agreement that you guys make. So I want to put that out there. I know a lot of folks have been asking about the money piece, and it is the best answer is it depends on on what the bargain is. It depends on what the contract says, right? So I know that's a non-answer, but it's the answer.
Thanks, Cynthia. Carmine and Sarah. Carmen and Sarah, are you
Hello.
still?
Yes, sorry. I
No.
didn't know how to use this headset.
Go ahead.
My question was asked by Glenn Robinson about do part-time fellows also do a capstone project, and you said yes. And so then I wanted to just clarify that Joe Mazguys warned us to pick a project, a capstone project that is realistic and in something that, like know your limitations, which I'm not so good at. And so in a 10-hour a week part-time fellowship, can you give an example of something that's like, okay, that's realistic? You could probably get that done on top of your regular job. Is there a part-time person that could speak to that?
Well, Joe is the full-time fellow, so he has a little bit more time than I do to devote to his capstone project. So as the part-time person, I can say that it kind of depends on what is going on at the time. Where am I at with my research? What kinds of things am I needing to do around that work? So there might be a week where I'm spending 5 hours, and then there might be a following week where I'm spending 15. It really depends on what it is you're trying to do. And I think that Joe was right in saying, this is a very fluid and flexible process, and it does morph. And part of the reason it morphs is because you may have bitten off more than you can chew. And then again, maybe the reach isn't as big as it could or should be. So as you go through the process, it does. Your time does help shape and factor into what your capstone project end product is going to look like. Joe, do you have anything else about that?
I would just say choose an area that you love, because you're going to live with it for a full year. And you want to make sure that the time you are dedicating to the capstone is time well spent and enjoyable time as well. So when I said to pick something that's meaningful, applicable, and practical, you want to make sure you continue to provide a service to the field, and your capstone is your service to the field, because you're addressing an issue that you think you can add to, that you could remedy, or that you feel requires some attention right
now. All right. Thanks, Melissa and Joe. All right, next question goes out to Matt Gorin.
Yeah, hi, how are you? Yeah, some of my questions have been answered, but I was thinking about the capstone project. I was curious how much the project themselves are in isolation, because when I was showing this to my administrators and some of my coworkers, they were, thinking that they had some idea. I mean, had some ideas that were building on my thoughts, and specifically it going towards special education. So I was wondering how much the fellows got to really share their projects and get ideas from outside perspectives.
Well, Joe, do you want to tackle that first, or do you want me to?
I can take this one, Melissa. Can I get I just need a clarification on the question, because I want to make sure I'm providing the correct answer.
Yeah, you have to excuse me. I grew up in Philadelphia.
So did I. So maybe that's why I kind of understand what you're saying.
I missed the accent. Anyway, okay, so.
All right, I have to ask, what neighborhood in Philadelphia?
I grew up in Winfield, right here in North Philly.
Okay, I know Winfield very well. I went to St. Joe's.
Oh, I literally around the corner from me. I lived in Overbrook Avenue,
There you go. Overbrook Pizza had the best pizza in the area. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I got more clout now. Okay, so yeah, so basically, when I was applying for this position, my principal had asked me my thoughts on my capstone project, and we are a special education school. I'm a special education teacher, and she was wondering if the school would be able to have input either into the project itself or helping me look at data and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to get too into specifics, and we want, we were thinking about looking at school-wide data, how, and how to interpret that.
Yep.
And beyond that, how that special education component gets factored into education overall in the United States. So that was, kind of like the beginnings of a project, but I want to be doing this work. I don't want to give it out to a group. So I was wondering how much
I hear you. Yeah,
I have.
No, and I can start to answer your question so that you can stop talking. The short answer is yes. So when I first took a look at my particular capstone focus, my eyes were very much at the district level. And very quickly, I began to realize when I started doing the research for the capstone that this was not necessarily a district issue. And then it expanded to, well, maybe this is simply a county issue. County then led to region, and region led to state. So what I'm saying to you is, I think in your specific work, you will be able to identify, once you begin the networking associated with your capstone, you are going to be able to identify common themes and patterns in other school districts and in other areas. And that's what's going to begin to elevate your capstone's focus for you. So when I talk about that morphing, it's like the snowball. You create that small snowball, and through the resources and leveraging of the Department of Ed, you're going to continue to roll that into a much larger project. It's going to have immediacy for you in your building. It's going to have immediacy for you in your district, but ultimately, I think it will also have both state and national implications for you as well.
Okay,
and I would agree with what Joe's saying. One of the things that that we've been able to do with this fellowship is to connect with different people around the country that have similar interests. And so that's been something that has, when I initially put this capstone proposal together, that was not something that I was even thinking about. How can I take this and expand my reach and broaden that network of people that are interested in this same topic? So yeah, I agree with Joe. It has morphed to be a bigger idea and project than I had originally intended it to be.
Yeah, and Melissa, I'll follow up just from personal experience, and this just occurred last week with me. I had a teleconference with a member of the Department of Ed. It was approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And when I hung up the phone, I now had a connection to 4 new organizations that were complementary to my capstone, 2 of which I was unaware of previous to that conversation. So there's the learning experience for me. And in the course of that conversation, I kept a running record of all of the people who could have been assistants to me, and I had 12 new folks on my list. So there's 12 new leads, 12 more conversations, 4 organizations that I need to introduce myself to, and everything that they will be able to share with me will be rolled into my capstone.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Kelly Ishmael.
Hi, it's me again. I have a question, and it's somewhat challenging to answer. In this time where COVID has hit budgets, school budgets, very hard, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what the budget and will bring for next year.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make this attractive to your superintendent, your business people, that you're asking them in very budget-sensitive times to let you go for a year?
So I don't know if either of you want to answer, or you want me. I'll jump in. So I'll jump in and say
this. This is Melissa, and I can start, and then maybe Brian, you can, or Cynthia can also throw things in along with Joe. As a superintendent, what I can tell you is that anytime that you have an opportunity to get your administrators and your teachers out in front of a topic, an issue, a problem, a practice, and take a lead in the field with something as visibly recognizable as the School Ambassador Fellowship, it really not only does it benefit the leader, it benefits the district because they now have someone that's a practitioner that's a voice at the national level. So, you know, for a superintendent, really the thing is you're giving some elevation to the district. You're becoming a voice for your district, for the community that you serve, for the students in that district, and you're bringing your problem of practice to the national level. And I think that there's a lot of power in that.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'd love to follow up. I'm your data guy. So I think what you need to say to that superintendent is only 130 educators from across the United States since 2008 have been invited to the table. And I have opportunity to sit at that table. And I have opportunity to be a voice, to be heard. And I can speak specifically to our needs within our own district. It's a gold star. It's a gold star for yourself as an educator, and it's a gold star for your district. It should be an easy sell, is what I'm saying to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Tania Hopkins.
Good morning from Japan. Hello, everybody.
Oh, wow.
I'm a DOTIA employee, and actually, Dr. Maskai, thank you so much for your email the other day. That was great information. I'm just curious as to if there have been many DODIA employees participating in the program or applying for the program. I know we are eligible to apply, and I appreciate that, because sometimes we kind of feel a little left out, but I appreciate that. But I'm just wondering if, number one, if we've had many applicants, and number two, if any DODIA employees have ever been chosen as a fellow.
I will take that. I can't speak to our current application pool right now because the application is still open and we haven't gone through and sorted folks out. But we have had quite a few DODIA folks join us as School Ambassador Fellows in the past, in both the teacher setting and also in the administrative setting as well. So I'd be happy to connect you with some folks, perhaps if you want to get some more information from them. If you go ahead and just send an email to staff@ed.gov. But yes, we are welcoming. We love our DODIA folks, so please apply. I mean, because we need, as remember, we're looking to really harness ideas from educators across the country, and in other countries that service our students who are, counted in our student total. So yes, please apply.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I was just, some people were kind of acting as, well, not acting as though, but it just seemed like it was a new program and a lot of people had not heard of it. So I was just kind of curious. So thank you. I will send the email to be connected with the DODIA employee. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Ryan Torinian.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Ryan.
How you doing? I've received this question personally, and I don't know the answer, and I'm really curious. So this is in reference to the question about Title I. My understanding is probably that question is trying to get at whether or not you teach at a school that has a high percentage of students who are, below the poverty line or receive free and reduced meals. However, we also know, if you work in our office, you know that over 76% of schools that receive Title I are elementary schools, just by design. That's just kind of how it works out. If you taught at a high school or a middle school or even a private school that happened to serve a vast majority of students who do receive free and reduced meals, would that be a way to mark that and provide proof of that, even though technically your LEA might not actually give you the Title I funds because oftentimes it's reserved just for elementary schools?
Sure. So would the school actually, like, when folks share that report card, will it show that those students are like Title I eligible, even though they're not actually receiving the funds?
Yeah, it would be like if you could give your school, I'm saying this as a former principal, you give your school report card, it shows over 95% of students free and reduced meals. But because it's a high school, your LEA chooses to give the dollars to the elementary schools instead. Could you still mark it and show, actually, I'm serving almost 100% of students in free and reduced meals?
Yeah, that's fine. That still counts.
All right. Jan, no last name, Jan.
Sorry, it's Alejado. I was trying to figure out this whole system because I've learned every platform now. Just to kind of give you my background, I am a speech language pathologist based out in Brooklyn, New York. And essentially I have a few questions because I've been working on my application as well. The first thing is, given that you are working on a capstone project, have there been any capstone projects that were replicated or expanded upon from previous years, or are we doing something genuinely from our own experience and, it's kind of like a jumping off point?
Sure. So the capstone idea is actually fairly new with the School Ambassador Fellowship Program. So we started it in our last cohort. So right now, a lot of the ideas are new. However, once you become a School Ambassador Fellow, if you would like to look at the work of past fellows and try to build off that, you can. But most times you come in with an idea that's similar. So a lot of times we could possibly put you together, but most folks come in with ideas that are a bit different. So it's kind of like we're networking you together, but when you're writing it from your own perspective and your own unique school needs, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does. And in terms of kind of jumping off on what you had said in terms of opportunities or networking opportunities, you've answered part of the question that you're able to collaborate with other fellows. But I believe it was Joseph, who's a principal in Pennsylvania. You had mentioned that you were able to kind of network with, let's say, other businesses. Do we have to generate our own network? Are we kind of guided along the way in this process?
I can address that from personal experience. So there's leverage, to use a department word, when you reach out to someone and let them know that you're calling from the United States Department of Education. So in all of my years as a building principal, I never had cause to contact the president of the Pennsylvania Principals Association. But when I took a look at my capstone and realized that I had the opportunity and I had the potential to really touch every principal in the 500 school districts that constitute Pennsylvania, I thought that was a good thing. So I reached out to the president of the Principals Association for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and he and I had a wonderful hour-long meeting last week as well, talking about my capstone and bringing together focus groups to discuss my capstone. And he was able to, through his network, so I make the contact to him, now I utilize and piggyback on his networks in order to reach all of the regions in the state of Pennsylvania to be able to set up a focus group in each one of those regions when it comes to principal professional development. See how it works?
Yes, that
Pretty
sounds
neat. Yeah,
pretty awesome, actually.
It's
just the fact that being told that you're, affiliated with the U.S. Department of Education, you basically are kind of like you're getting in there.
Yeah. What are the old commercials about E.F. Hutton? People listen.
And then, so in my situation, I am designated at a current school right now. And the really interesting thing about a lot of related service providers, given that we are providing teletherapy now, there is a potentiality that we could potentially be assigned to additional schools due to a huge influx of kids not getting the services that they had. A lot of people are retiring. People are, no longer able to provide services. So in the event that, and again, I can't I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody has a crystal ball. But in the event that, let's say, I am no longer with my school, or I am pretty much stretched out into other districts within my school, how then do I validate that with my superintendent? Do I just go straight with the Department of Ed in New York City? You know?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a really interesting question, and I would love to dialogue more about that. So if you would send an email to our staff.ed.gov, we'll be happy to, jump back in and, kind of listen through and kind of talk through some possibilities for you.
Okay. Just to recap, staff.ed.gov.
It's staff@ed.gov. I dropped it in the chat one more time.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we have 2 minutes. So I'm gonna try to let you all go at 6:30. I'm so happy for all those of you who stuck around and asked questions and listen. I do have 4 hands raised, so we're gonna get through the 4 hands raised. But for others, if there are any other questions, Cynthia just dropped the email in the chat. So do not hesitate to email us at staff@ed.gov. We'll continue to dialogue with you all as you all prepare to submit your application. So thank you again. April DeMarco. April DeMarco. Not sure if you're on mute. All right, no April. All right, Mary Shire.
Hi, just real quickly, whoever fills out the participant verification form, do they have to be one of your recommenders, or can those be 2 separate things?
They can
be separate, yes.
Okay, so as long as you have another district official or principal that does a recommendation, you've got that covered, and then it can be someone in human resources that fills out the participant verification.
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You're welcome. Stella Roberg.
And Joe, just so that, or I'm sorry, Brian, just so that you know, April is with us. She reconnected.
Oh, good.
Hi, I'm Stella Roberg. I hope that I'm not overstepping someone else's opportunity to speak.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm not in the Department of Education per se. I'm working for a private daycare where we do have a universal pre-K program. Does that still qualify me for the fellowship?
So are you recognized by the federal government as an educational entity?
Yes.
Okay, so as long as you have that paperwork, because that's something that in order for you to be eligible for the Department of Education program, you have to have paperwork saying that you are officially, you follow federal guidelines and all those things like that. So that paperwork would keep you eligible for the program. But we can talk a little more offline, I think, if you have any more questions about what particular form you have. I believe there is a certain form, but I can't think of the number off the top of my head, but I think that may help determine your eligibility as well.
Okay. The other thing is I'm not seeing the chat box on my screen here. I'm seeing video, mic, more actions. Let's see if it's in there. No, keypad. I'm not seeing the chat box to get that email. So it's staff@ed.gov. Is that what you said?
It's S as in Sam, A as in Adam, F as in Frank, at ed.gov.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, it's April DeMarco. I finally got my audio working.
We were waiting for you, April. We weren't going anywhere.
Yay. So I'm a couple of questions. In teaching experience, this is my 25th year teaching. In the last couple of years, I didn't hear you mentioned many different types of schools. I'm at a BOCES. Is that qualify? So we have 25 different component districts. I'm in a school building. And so I wondered if a BOCES qualified.
What's a BOCES? I have to ask.
A board of child education services. So what happens is when a student of certain special needs cannot be serviced in their own district-based program where they're from, if they need such a special environment programming or even apparatus for physical handicaps, they will be bused out of district to a BOCES program, a building. We look like a school, we act like a school, but we are an agency. So our board members are made up of the president boards of our component districts. So a BOCES, it may have different names in different states, but in New York here, it's Board of Child Education Services.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we're all certified teachers. It's a special education school.
That sounds super interesting.
So we have some
that
schools for
reminds me-
easy, some schools for all different types of LD, different disability specialties.
Yeah, that reminds me of the speed cohort in Illinois.
Yes, right. Okay.
Yeah,
we
that's what
have
it's reminding me of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna say I believe that you are eligible.
Yes.
However, what I will do just to make sure, I am pretty sure that you're eligible. But I will go ahead and if you can send an email to the staff@ed.gov address, just asking that question, we'll make sure that we get that totally verified, and we'll also let you know what particular forms you need to submit for that as well.
Thank you. Also, I heard that this call was being recorded. Will it be made available to listen back on?
That is the plan. Yes. I'm not going to lie. Our calls is a little long. It's 2 hours. So I'm going to see if we can get it edited in a space so that it will actually fit. But yes.
Well, the Q&A is the best. Please leave in the Q&A. My last question. I know we're rushing. My last question is this. So I spent the 25 years of teaching. I spent the last 2 years. I went back to the Rockland cohort. I earned my SBL, my SDL, and in May I graduated and was hopes to be a school district administrator. COVID comes along, and before there was an administration shortage, and then suddenly there was this mass exodus, at least here in New York, and then everything was on hold. We were on a freeze. And when I listened to the fellowship being available either in residency in DC or part-time in your community, it's very appealing to me. I have adult children to go to DC, and this would be a lifestyle change, a huge commitment and a lifestyle change. And I just have, it sounds like a semantic question, but sometimes, what life chooses you. How does that transition occur? Is it almost like going to college? How do you help relocate a person? Where do we stay and live, and what kind of coordination is done as a part of the fellowship, or you're on your own, girl?
Sure. I would, Joe, do you think you can answer this? I know you haven't made the full transition. I've actually gone through the process.
My response would be hypothetical since I'm the remote resident. April, I was in the same situation, I guess, as you in terms of where I am in life. My wife and I are pseudo empty nesters with all of our children being in college at this point in time. So we were planning on, maintaining the household here at home, and then just through the stipend that's provided in the IPA to take an apartment in the Washington, D.C. area. So I was planning on being there 5 days a week, and then coming home for the weekends and just making it work, for lack of a better phrase. But I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to be a resident as well and truly experience the department and to experience Washington for a full year.
So we're on our own for housing.
Well, not necessarily.
Oh, yeah, no.
So not as so in my experience, because I relocated from Chicago. So after I was selected to be a school ambassador fellow and was told I'd be full time, folks in the fellowship program on our core team, they gave me like a list of different folks that I could talk to about finding places to stay. So I did come up for a couple weekends and went around the different areas in the DC, Virginia, and Maryland area to look for housing. And because the department did provide a living stipend, I tried to make my living stipend work for me in the places that I chose to look. But I was given here are some places where folks pretty much live, and here's some neighborhoods. I have children. I brought my children with me, so getting a good school was important. So they gave me ideas on here's where the school districts over here look like versus the ones over here. So we'll, as in the staff program, we'll give you some guidance. But there is like no boarding house for staffs. We just kind of find
no dorm room where we were.
No dorm room.
When you folks describe what a day in the life could be like for a resident, it makes me so excited. I could go out of my mind. It makes me all the more hungrier for this at this point in my life. I am going to go back to my application with a fine-tooth comb. This has energized me and made me so much more committed to this being my primary goal for next year. Thank you for all of your time and detail.
You're very welcome.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that.
I'm in it to win it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And April, I'll just follow up. I'm a high maintenance man. There's no dorm living for me. And just to put things into context, Cynthia called me on March 13th to offer me the residency, and we all know what happened on March 13th.
Yeah, that was the day. Yeah.
I know.
That
Me
was
and
the
Cuomo
day.
were like this on the TV. Me and Cuomo.
Yeah, that was the day.
Lucky Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. We know everyone is busy and everybody is excited about their holiday break. So just thank you for taking this evening. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. We are still available to you all. Once again, do not hesitate to email us at sab@ed.gov. We'll continue to respond. Anything that pops up, please feel free to reach out because we want you all to position yourselves the very best leading up to the application close on January 11th. So once again, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Amy. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Happy holidays. Everyone stay safe. And we'll be reading your application shortly.
And please feel free to email. And yeah, I'm excited, guys.
Thank you so much for everything you taught us tonight.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all, guys. Thank you so much.
You're
This
welcome.
was really, really great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.